What's up, guys?
We're back.
It's been a while. It's been some time. Look at this. Look at this. He came prepared, and for me, all I got is my Summit shirt, guys. So I'm
Yeah,
representing that.
self-promoting. Why am I not surprised?
Whereas, Glen sends me Taco Bell shirts and wants me to promote them, but
Yeah, our unofficial sponsor, dude.
So welcome back, guys. Taco Tuesday. Let's talk about insurance. The last episodes, I think you guys might have seen, unless I'm remembering incorrectly, were the in-person ones from
Yes.
Summit.
Yes, I believe so.
So it's been a little while since we brought you guys some fresh live episodes. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Christian Brindle. He's Glen Shelton, and yeah, I mean we have some stuff to talk about, my friends.
We do.
First things first. How is Glenjamin Shelton today?
You know what's funny is we had stopped recording, but I remember at the time thinking this would be a great thing to mention on Taco Tuesday when I almost died in a riptide. Do you remember when I posted about that?
Kind of, but now my memory's going blank.
Right, I know. Well, I think this is worthy of sharing for a minute.
Okay, go.
This will suck in our audience, right? They're going to be interested. So this was a couple months ago now, but it was a Sunday afternoon. I'm at the beach, right? For those of you who are like Christian and don't know, Oregon touches the Pacific Ocean. And I happen to be very close to the Pacific Ocean in Oregon. So
how did you get there? Did you go to California?
We'll pull up a map at a later episode. But so I'm at the beach and I've never really been in a rip tide before or a rip current, right? And essentially, if you don't know what that is, it's basically where the ocean, instead of like the tide coming in and like waves coming in, it's basically going the opposite direction. It's just sucking things out. And depending on, it's kind of like an earthquake where sometimes it's really minor. You might not notice them or feel them that much. And then there's really crazy ones where you could get sucked out in minutes. You could be like miles out to sea. So I'm out there with my niece and my nephew, and we'd been swimming for like 20 or 30 minutes. So we were pretty tired too at this point. But we decided, we're like, okay, let's swim back in. And like right as I was like at my waist. So like it wasn't like I could stand, but I could feel, I'm like, whoa. I'm like, it seems like the water's starting to try to suck me out. And I turned, my niece, she's like 11 years old. All of a sudden she's swimming as hard as she can and she's not moving at all. And I'm like, okay. And then like it was one of those things where like in the moment, like if you're getting in a car crash, it's like you kind of know what's about to happen right as it's happening, right? It's like, oh man, that car just ran a red light. Boom. Well, all of a sudden, I told my nephew, I'm like, hey, can you grab your sister? Because he's in between me and her. He tries to grab her, and then they both start to get sucked out. And then I'm like, okay, do I try to like coach them from a distance? Like, swim to me. And I was like, I'm going to just jump in this with them because I figured it's just a current, we can kind of swim out of it. So, and again, this is kind of a PSA at the start of our Taco Tuesday episode today is if you're in a riptide, swim horizontally to the shore. So don't swim towards the shore, swim parallel to the shore and you will swim out of the riptide.
Interesting. So I guess, I mean, those beaches up in Oregon, the beaches
they'll kill you.
You got to stay away from those.
Yeah. But there is this moment, where even though I was confident we were going to get out, there's a moment where I'm looking at the shore and I'm like, I don't know if we're going to get back to shore. He kind of puts that whole perspective, like, you're thinking about leaving your family behind, right? I mean, your life insurance, legacy, I mean, all of it, right? You're like, I don't know. It's a weird feeling, sensation. Have you ever had like what's the closest call you've had where you're like, whoa, I could have just died? Closest call Christian Brindle has had
Hasn't been a lot. Christian Brindle's pretty safe.
Christian Brindle, guys.
But
stay safe with Christian Brindle.
Probably the closest thing was when I was 19. I was driving in a parking lot, and I was looking at my phone and texting and driving. And
Classic.
I will go. There's this big curve. I go right over it, and my airbags pop out. My windows absolutely just wrecked my windshield. My oil tank breaks off underneath it. This is an embarrassing story, guys. And all the oil pours out all over the parking.
This was a curve?
It's a big curve, man. It was a mean looking curve. And so
you totaled your car on a
concussion. I got a concussion. I was texting and driving. It was like, this is what this is me.
Oh my god,
this was me. And
we might have to cut this out. I'm embarrassed for you.
And that's the thing that comes to mind. The closest to death. Like, I mean, not that I was close to death. I wasn't close to death, but
you never know.
I don't know if I've ever been close to death.
Those curves. You gotta be careful with those curves. You never know.
So the moral of the story is, don't start driving until you're 21, because clearly you're stupid until then.
Well, I think if you look at the actuary rates for car insurance, I think that's pretty much a proven point, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm no P&C expert.
Yeah. Where are you?
Or am I yet?
Christian Brindle.
P&C.
Extraordinaire.
But I mean, I don't know if I ever had a close to death encounter. That's the only thing that comes to mind.
Man, I feel like I need to give you one now. Like, I need to come out there and we got to do something crazy.
Like jump out of a helicopter and my parachute doesn't open or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll cut your primary chute, so you got to figure out your secondary chute mid-fall. Something for the kid, dude, to tell Violet one day.
Talk about being resourceful. Right, the insurance business is all about being resourceful and figuring things out. I mean, this is it, guys. You're either going to be resourceful or you're going to splat on the ground.
Couldn't be, or get sucked out to sea and get eaten by a shark.
That too.
Yeah.
I don't have any super epic stories where, like, I punched a bear in the face and ran away and everything like that. I don't know. I don't got any of those.
I don't think there's a lot of bear punching stories. I don't think a lot of people get to do that.
It's funny because, like, I am so against anything that is dangerous. My wife wants to go camping in the mountains, and I'm constantly like, no, there's bears up there. And she's like, bears? And she's like, yeah, there's bears, but there's areas where there's not a lot of bears. I'm like, until there's a bear. And I'm like,
yeah.
Until there's a bear. She's like, you're ridiculous. She's like, you're unbelievable. She's like, you won't take us camping because you're afraid
you are like the ideal insurance agent. Like, you're so risk adverse to all situations. You were built for insurance. I'm
calculating in my mind the chances of a bear attack go down to zero. The risk goes to zero if you go nowhere near a bear.
Stormy, there's a way we can avoid bear attacks. You want to know how? We don't leave this house.
That's exactly
literally
something
will not leave this. Yeah.
I said almost verbatim that. I was like, if we don't go camping up in the mountains, we have no chance of getting attacked by a bear. Because she's like, the chances of that are so slim. I'm like, but there's zero if we don't go.
There's a way I can eliminate it entirely. Well, guys, if you've stuck around this long, congratulations. You deserve a badge.
Of honor.
A badge of honor. That's right. Today, though, we do have, and Christian has a special energy drink, guys. Verve.
Yes. So, for those of you who have been longtime listeners, I've talked about how I've been in a couple different MLMs in my life. This was the first one I was ever a part of. No, I'm not back in, but I wanted a tasty beverage. So we ordered some.
Christian's preparing for additional compliance from CMS to the point where he's a full-time MLMer. Once he has to abandon his agency entirely. So, guys, sign up for Verve today. Use the code Christian 123.
I think that transitions well when it comes to being prepared for going out of business. Let's talk about chargebacks.
Yes,
This transitions very, very well.
yes, that is the topic we want, and I think we have talked about it before on the show. Obviously, I know for a fact it's come up before. I don't think we've ever spent an episode really primarily talking about chargebacks. So, the first question I have for you is, what was your experience with your first chargeback? And it's so different for me because I'm coming from the life insurance side of the business. So Medicare is typically a different animal, but I want to hear your experience first, and then I'll kind of talk about how it went for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I with the first experience with a chargeback that I ever had, I had 5 clients on the books as a Medicare agent. I was very new. I was very raw at that point in time. My dad was going with me on my first couple of appointments and helping me make the sales. So that's kind of how I was learning right off the bat. I was cold calling. So I was cold calling people. If anybody knows my story, that was a big part of my early years. So I was cold calling people that are turning 65. So I was cold calling, making appointments. And then he was going with me on those appointments for the first probably 10 or so. And he was trying to make the sale. So there was this couple that we were working with, and I'll never forget it. They had a Chevron retirement plan. I don't even know if this is a thing anymore or if it still works this way, but for a couple of years, this was a thing.
Like the gas station?
Yeah.
Chevron. Okay.
Like, I don't think they actually worked in the gas station. I think they were like corporate of some kind.
Right.
But it was Chevron, like the company Chevron. And their plan at that time was something that could not be used with a Medicare Advantage plan or anything like that. So they're turning 65. We enrolled them into this plan, but they were thinking that they just wouldn't renew their Chevron plan. Well, the Chevron plan kept re-enrolling them and kicking our plan out again and again and again and again and again.
Really fast. Do you just get triggered every time you see a Chevron gas station because of it? You're like, ah!
I mean, I have some stock in it now, so it's softened a little bit, but
okay.
No, but I remember the way we found out that it happened in the first place was I got a full chargeback, and in the Medicare world, that if with Medicare Advantage, if someone cancels in the first 90 days, you get rapid disenrollment. And so with that rapid disenrollment, they take every single piece of your commission back, every penny, if it's in the first 90 days. And this was, so they took all my commission back. And I remember just being panicked because I didn't have any renewals coming in or anything like that. And I was just like, I did a really long interview with, I did a really long interview with Ron Ray the other day. And one thing we were talking about, it was like a 2-hour interview, and it was we went into everything. But one thing I talked about, I brought up this situation specifically. And one thing I talked about was a lot of people have this impression that I was getting a salary from my dad. I was getting this, I was getting that. No. So if I had a chargeback, like I gotta take care of it. You know what I mean? And so we got with them. We found out what was going on. They hadn't re-enrolled into another plan or anything like that. So we didn't know how to deal with it. So we kept putting the app in. Well, we did this multiple times. Our plans kept getting kicked out. What ended up needing to happen was they needed to contact Chevron and pull the plug on it themselves. That was the only way to get the app to go through. But that was my first chargeback. And it was an absolute shit show, and it's stressful, and definitely toughens you up.
Yeah. So, it's fun. So the way on the life insurance side, again, if you're a newer agent, or maybe you're listening to this or watching this and you haven't even started selling insurance yet, 92% nation strong out there, guys. On the life insurance side, you get advanced 9 months of premium commission, right? So basically every month that they pay for so you get advanced the first 9 months, but if let's say they pay for 3 months and then cancel the policy, well, then there's 6 months of commission that they advance to you that they're going to be taking out of future commissions, right? And if you don't have future commissions that they can take it out of, they're going to basically send you a letter saying, hey, you owe us this money. And if you don't pay it, it's going to collections, right? Just like any other debt, because you did essentially get advanced that money. So coming into the life insurance business, I really don't think, like, I think I may have asked a question like to the agency owner. And I think I was like, hey, what happens if they cancel their fault? But there was never a discussion about like, hey, this is going to happen a certain amount of time. Like,
Yeah.
you need to be ready to have 10 to 20% or 30%, right? Everyone does things a little bit differently, but what I wish the agency owner had said, or someone from the IMO had said to me when I was a new agent, is, be prepared for these chargebacks to happen. Even if you do everything right, you're still going to get cancellations. So I wasn't prepared at all. And for me, the way I found out about my first chargeback, I'm trying to remember the specific story. Like I can't remember what client it was. I think I know who it was as we're talking about it. But for me, the way I found out is, I pumped through like 5 apps. So I got like 5 apps into the carrier approved. I'm feeling good. I'm waiting for my next check to come, and then it doesn't come, or it came and it was significantly smaller than what I thought it was. And I remember being like, what the heck? And I logged into my agent portal and I'm like, what's going on here? And I maybe even ended up calling the carrier like, hey, what happened to my commissions, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, well, so-and-so canceled their policy. And I was just like devastated, like morally devastated. I was just, it's so tough. It's hard enough to go out and generate these sales and to write applications. So to feel like you're now starting a step back when you take that chargeback, that cancellation, it can be really tough. And it never was really explained to me that this would happen on a reoccurring basis,
Right, absolutely. And I think that's a great point, that agents don't have that explained to them enough. I think on the final expense side, what do you think would be a good ratio to expect chargebacks? Like if it's a reasonable expectation. And this is not my world, but my
Right.
guess off the top of my head would be like 20% persistency. Like what would you say though?
Yeah,
Or
so
not 20%, 80% persistency,
right.
and maybe 20% chargebacks.
Yeah, I knew what you were insinuating, but yeah, that
20% persistency.
1 out of 5 will stay on the books. Be prepared to lose 80% of your clients. So the recruiters of the final expense world, they'll come to you and they'll be like, we have a 92% persistency, but that's in my opinion complete bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody keeps 90% of their final expense clients. I think if you're crushing it, you're probably only losing like 15%. I think the average agent is probably losing at least 1 out of 5 apps that they write. If you are like a fly by night, independent agent, you're doing these appointments, you have no follow up, you have no retention plan, you'll probably lose 30 or 40%. If you're selling over the phone and you're reckless, you could lose easily half of the business that you write. I personally know call centers who they kind of had to have a come to Jesus moment where they wrote all this business and then they lost almost half of it because they had no retention, and they just, how can you operate if every dollar you sell is something that you have to pay back in 6 months or less? How can you possibly operate as a business? It's impossible.
Yep, 100%. I mean, I've always said with Medicare, of course, I think Medicare for an independent agent probably will have a little bit of a higher persistency rate. Like I've always said, if you're great, you might have a 95% persistency rate. If you're very good, maybe 90 persistency rate. I think the average Medicare agent these days would probably have an 85% persistency rate or something like that.
Do you feel like it's gone down? Do you feel like Medicare's persistency has increased or gone?
Increased?
Yeah. the loss has increased, right? So do you
Right.
feel like the average Medicare agent is keeping less of their business?
I would say yes, because there's just such an absolute influx in large corporations that are competing for the business with the independent
Right.
agent, right? There's the call centers out there. There's just a lot of different, um, there's just a lot of different organizations that are trying to get your business. Like agents, I just saw someone in the Facebook group the other day. They're like, Walmart has their own agents. Huh? I'm like, we knew about this years ago. We knew about this 2 or 3 years ago, guys.
Yeah, long time coming.
Like, but people never actually pay attention to things until it's right in front of them. Like their
Yeah.
clients are now starting to get letters from Walmart saying, let one of our agents write you. Like, so I think there's a lot more of that, and that's causing the chargeback rate for the average agent to go probably up. Now, does it have to? I think if you do a good job for your clients, you can still be between 90 to 95%. I do believe that, because I think most people that are under 90%, um, they're not in a place where they're servicing the client. Like you said, they're a fly by night agent, for lack of
Right.
a better word.
Right. Hit and run.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's kind of the way to look at it. But yeah, I mean, there was there's people I've talked to that they'll say things like, I've never gotten a chargeback ever. And there's only one of two possibilities with that. Number one, you have not written hardly any business.
You haven't sold anything.
Or
Yeah.
number two, you're a stone cold liar. One of the
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
And if you're in this business long enough, chargebacks will come, they will happen, they are part of the business.
100%.
No matter what you're selling, unfortunately. But
What
if you do a
what
good
do
job, you
you
keep most of them.
what would be your advice to a newer agent or maybe even a more established agent who's trying to increase their persistency and limit chargebacks? What would you say to them?
So one thing that we do internally that we preach to our agents is, when they get a new client, I tell them after 2 weeks after the application date to call that client and make sure they got their cards. Check in, make sure they got their cards. That's a good one, because so often the person doesn't get their cards,
Or they
and
threw it away, junk mail.
yeah, it's a lot of times that, or
Yep.
maybe, or for whatever reason, so I think that's just reassurance, maybe 2 or 3 weeks have passed since you did the application, whatever it ends up being, and you are in a place that, you are following up with your client, and they just have that reassurance that you're there for them, that you're out there, that you're
Right.
watching out for them. I think that's big. One thing we do with our clients, and it's a big job and it's not easy, but we call all of the Medicare Advantage clients during AEP. I mean, that's more of just a retention thing in general, but that's big. I think you do, if you make it a point to do that, get it done in the first week of October if you can. If you have a lot of clients, maybe 2 weeks,
Yep.
and make sure to do that. Like, some people don't want to do that. I get it. People are like, oh, I'm going to automate it all. You can't automate that all. I just don't know a way to do it. You can delegate it, by hiring people and things like that, internally, but you can maybe automate some of it. You can send email blasts out, and maybe, 10% of them, that will satisfy them or something like that. But I think it's just that it's the doing the work of that customer care. And it's
Yeah.
just the regular stuff that everybody hears about. It's sending birthday cards, it's sending thank you cards, it's sending Christmas cards, it's having that communication, I think, is big.
Yeah, I don't think it's rocket science. I don't what people with high persistency what they're doing. It really is extra work, and you're either, you know, automating it, delegating it. It's very hard to do it all yourself, right?
Right.
Like trying to stay in front of your clients, but I think it really can be that easy though.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a card every couple months. It can be a phone call. Like there's no necessarily wrong or right way of doing it. One thing I was thinking of though that I wanted to mention. So Jeff Root, for those of you who might not know who he is the owner of Digital BGA. and they specialize in selling final expense over the phone. He's been doing it for quite some time. He's been selling life insurance over the phone for like almost 2 decades. Wrote a book about it. Highly recommend any of his content, you guys. But I believe he was telling me that their persistency is at like 86%, which if you're selling final expense over the phone, I think that's an incredible stat.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him, like, well, what is it that you guys are doing? Like, how did you get your persistency so high? And I think they have a team of people that are just dedicated to watching the policies essentially. And the second anything comes up with a issue with the policy that could result in a chargeback, they're jumping on it right away. And I can tell you guys from firsthand experience, sometimes it's as simple as, oh, I changed my account. Like they had an automatic draft for the premium and they got a different bank account. And it's been 3 or 4 months, and they weren't even thinking about the premium. Oh, thank you for calling. Let me give you my new payment information. And you can save a policy that easy. And I've experienced that firsthand. Now there's other times where it's like, well, I talked to another agent and they told me that the policy you sold me sucked. So I canceled it and blah, blah, blah. So there's policies you can't save or policies that you can't save that easily. But I think there's a mindset with a lot of agents where they're scared once the policy's in the process of being canceled, or once it has been canceled, they're scared to reach out to that person. But I highly encourage you guys, reach out to your clients. If you have a charge, see what it is, see what's going on, learn from your mistakes, try to save the policy. Maybe you have an assistant who does that for you, but don't just let it be and be like, oh, well, I lost 30% of my business. Oh, well, whatever, like,
Yeah.
I think that's an insane way to look at it.
Yeah. 100%. We're at about 26 minutes on this episode.
Ooh,
I think we could go for another 45 minutes on it, I'm sure, but I want to respect your time. So I want to,
thank you for respecting me. I
you're
really
welcome.
appreciate that.
I mean, someone has to, right?
Someone, yeah, my family doesn't. So
My family doesn't either. It's
yeah.
okay.
So it's nice to be respected by somebody. So
For the last 30 days in a row, my daughter wakes up at 5 to 6, somewhere in there, like clockwork. She stands at her gate and her door and shakes it and screams. And what she wants is to get into bed with us.
right.
And I cave every single day.
Right.
I go open the gate, let her in. She comes and cuddles up next to me, and it's just like it's using and abusing. I'm like, sleep in your bed, but that's never good enough.
It's never enough.
Never
Okay,
enough.
final thoughts on I want to ask you one more question about chargebacks. So did you ever, or have you ever set up money to the side for chargebacks?
No. But I did set up money to the side for taxes early on. Now I don't quite do that. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not as much these days. But early on, I was just paranoid about taxes. So I always put, some money aside for taxes. And if I had a chargeback, I would try to go out and write business to take care of it. That was always my intention. And if I couldn't, then I would dip into the tax money and replenish it later when I could.
I think that's a good strategy. I know people who will separate, like, hey, I'm going to take a quarter of all the money that comes in, set it to the side, and for taxes, chargebacks, whatever. I think that's a good way to do it. I just kind of got to the point as an agent where I just kind of anticipated it. Like if I wrote 10 apps, I knew I wasn't going to hold all of them. Like there was no way. I just knew that there was going to be a few that changed their mind or fell off or whatever. So I think regardless of how you do it, you just have to really anticipate it, that it's going to happen. So final thoughts, Mr. Brindle, on today's Taco Tuesday. Let's talk about insurance.
Yeah, I think I would say understand your commissions, guys, how you're paid. Like with Medicare, for example, you write Medicare Advantage, you're going to be paid out multiple different times. Like with almost every single carrier, you're not just going to, like, you write a new Medicare Advantage plan, right? And in 2022, at the time of talking about this, it's a $573 street level comp. You're not going to get that all at once. You're going to get like $80, and then you might get the rest of it later. I've even had situations where I've had 3 different payments on one policy. So understand how that works, so that way you don't bother your upline and be like, where's my commission? I got $75 on this true up or whatever, you know. And make sure that you expect chargebacks. Understand that they're part of the business. You're not special. Everybody thinks that they're God's gift to insurance and to their clients. Be like, my clients never would do this to me because I do a good job for them. Like,
Right.
get the fuck over yourself. You know, like, you're going to have chargebacks. It's going to happen. You could be Jesus of insurance and you're going to get chargebacks.
Yeah.
So understand that.
100%. I do think that there was, at least at one point in my career, it felt like there was what's the right word here? There was a generalization that I think you just touched on, that only scammy agents get chargebacks, right?
Yes.
That was definitely a generalization when I came into the industry. It was like, as long as you're doing everything right, you don't have to worry about chargebacks. So it's like, and obviously now that I've been through it, it's like that you could do everything perfect and you will still get chargebacks. So
Totally.
I think that's a very important point to make. The other thing I really wanted to touch on before we wrap up is, if you're recruiting agents, you are an upline. When you sign on, I know everyone's like, ooh, overrides, let's go. You are also accepting liability. And again, read your contracts, but you're accepting liability for your downline agents.
Yep.
If you have a downline agent who is a hit and run agent, like we talked about in this episode, and they write 30 grand in business and none of it stays, and then they are out of the business all entirely in the next month, guess who has to pay that 30 grand back? Boom, boom. Mm-hmm. You do, as the upline. It's your responsibility, even though that commission got paid to the agent. And even though technically it's the agent that owes the insurance carrier will be made whole by you, the upline. And if not, they will do the same thing that they did to the agent to you, potentially terminate your contract, send that money to collections, debit your future commissions, etc. So yeah, that's my final thoughts on today's chargeback episode.
Good deal.
Good stuff.
Love it. Guys, if you like this episode and you want to see more like it, do us a favor and smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Just smash it. Abuse.
Smash it.
And make sure to comment your thoughts down below. We'd love to have a dialogue with you guys. Subscribe on YouTube. Give us a 5-star rating on podcast platforms. And we'll see you next time. Later, guys.